everyone, it's Stephanie here and welcome back. In today's video we are going to be creating this card inspired by this card that was designed by design team member Torico, and we're going to be using the new Bubble Over with Joy stamp set, and I'm also going to be using some watercolor pencils. Now when recreating this card, I would probably more than likely reach for my Copic markers or my regular pencil crayons just because those are two mediums that I am comfortable using. Watercolor pencils are not something I use very often, although I really do love the look of them. So since Torico used them on her card, I decided I could do the same. So I decided to get out my Faber Castell watercolor pencils, and I'm going to use those in the card today. So these are the Goldfaber Aqua watercolor pencils, and I will make sure to put in the description what exact colors I'm going to be using. I created this little swatch chart so I know the colors, so I can kind of keep track as I'm coloring, and I know what color I'm going to end up with. In addition to the stamp set, we're also going to be using the new Elegant Rectangle STAX dies, and we're going to create both our watercolor panel as well as a cardstock mat underneath it using these dies. So I've already went ahead and die cut the watercolor piece of paper, and I'm going to be using cement gray hybrid ink to do my stamping. That is one thing that I did change up from Torico's card. She had more brown tones on her bunnies. She used a brown tone hybrid ink and then used kind of brown colors to color them in. I'm going to change mine up and do mine in gray. So I'm going to stamp with the cement gray hybrid ink first, since we are going to be doing watercoloring. This is going to be a permanent ink. And then I'm going to kind of make my bunnies more of a gray color. I use my Misty to stamp the images just because it is watercolor paper, so it can sometimes take a couple of stamps to get a nice solid line. And I'm also going to be using this Faber Castell water brush. So this is a brush that already has water inside of it, so I can just release water as I need it to do my painting with the watercolor pencils. So I'm just going in and laying down some color with my pencils, and I'm just kind of adding this gray color around the edges of the different areas of the bunny so that I can then go in with my water brush and kind of pull that color into the center and kind of color it in and give that watercolored look. Now, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this is not a medium that I have used very often, so I'm not 100% sure if this is the exact way you're supposed to use these. I just figure it kind of gives a little bit of shading if you keep some of the color kind of around the edges and pull the color in, but maybe you're supposed to completely color the images. I'm not really sure. This is kind of a trial and error for me as well. So I just kind of experimented with the two different bunnies, and on the first one I did a little bit less color and didn't put a lot of pressure down, so I didn't add a ton of color. And he's more of a really light gray rabbit, whereas this guy here, I did lay down a little bit more color, and I did put more pressure on my pencil so that I had a darker color of color going down, and that little bunny ended up to be a little bit of a darker gray. And I like both of the rabbits. I don't prefer one over the other. I like the light look as well as the darker look, so I guess it's just personal preference on how much color you actually want in your watercolor images. So now I'm just going to move on and work on the rest of the card. I did the little grass area at the bottom, so I just laid down a bunch of that green color and then just used my water brush to really even out that color. And now I'm going to color in the bubbles with some aqua, some pink, and some purple. And I'm just laying the color onto like the left bottom of each of the bubbles. And then I'm just pulling that color over to the top area just to fill in the bubble and have it kind of have a highlighted look at the very top. For the little bunny's ears, I'm using the same pink that I used for the little bubbles at the top, and I just added a little bit of that color and pulled it in with my brush. And then I used the same for the noses, and then I just kind of tapped my water brush on top just to kind of even out that color. For the dresses on the bunnies, I didn't want to introduce a lot more new color, so I decided just to use the same purple and the same aqua color that I had used in the bubbles. So for this first bunny here, I laid down some of that purple color along the back area of her dress, and then I'm just using my brush to pull that color over to fill the entire space. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the aqua. I'm just going to apply that color and then just use my water brush once again and just kind of move that color around and get it so that it completely covers her entire dress. So now that I have the bunnies almost finished, I'm going to move on to the sky so I can let the little dress on the aqua bunny dry before I start to color in the little bubble container she's holding. So for the sky area, what I decided to do is just take my pencil and I'm just kind of drawing scallop lines in the sky area. And my idea here was to kind of make them look like clouds. And then I'm just taking my water brush and I'm just kind of moving that color above the line that I've colored. So I'm kind of pulling that blue up into that open area. And it's kind of softening those lines, but still leaving them dark enough that you can kind of see the definition of the clouds that I'm trying to create. I wasn't sure when I started this if I was actually going to like how it looked when I was done, but I did end up really liking it. I kind of like the soft look of those clouds in the background, and I think it worked just fine to do it freehand. If you do prefer to do something a little bit more controlled, you can definitely use a stencil like the mini cloud edges or anything like that to add color to the sky area, and just use the same pencils with the stencil, or you can use a completely different medium and use distress inks or something else in that sky. So now I'm just finishing up the two bunny images. I colored in the bubble container as well as the button on her dress, and then I also added a little bit of detail to their eyes and mouths since they kind of disappeared in the stamping, and I added a little bit of pink to their cheeks. And here's a quick look at all of the colors together that we used to color in the stamped panel. So it's nice, bright, springy colors. And I do feel that I probably could have laid down a little bit more color when I was doing the coloring with the pencils. And I think I would have ended up with a little bit more contrast and brightness in my images. I do like how it turned out, but it's a little bit lighter than I prefer. So I think I will try to add a little bit more color next time and see what happens. So now I'm just assembling the card. I have another one of the elegant rectangle stacks. This is the one slightly larger than the watercolor panel. And I've added that to my card base, which also has a grid pattern paper background on it. And I'm just going to stamp the sentiment on here before we adhere this to the card. So once again, I'm going to use my Misty just in case I didn't get even stamping. I would be able to double stamp, but it did work out fine the first time. And then I can go ahead and adhere this to the card. So I just used regular adhesive. I didn't use any foam adhesive, and I'm just adhering this directly on there. And now I have this really cute Easter scene with these really fun pastel colors and that really great watercolor look. And for the final touch on the card, we just want to really emphasize those bubbles. So I'm using some Nuvo Crystal Glaze and I'm adding it to each of the little bubbles on this image. And for the larger ones, I'm just kind of going around the outside edge and then going into the center and lifting up, and it gives me a perfectly domed shape that actually makes it look like actual bubbles on the card. And then that is going to complete our design. So thank you so much to Torico for creating a card that we were able to recreate and kind of step out of our comfort zone in today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.